So what we're going to do today is we're actually going to go to auction here, and we're going to showcase some of the things that you can do in order to prevent those things from happening. So I'm going to cue it in my dealership as well and see how many fun cars we can find. All right, let's take a Chrysler Pacifica. Now, this is ACV Auctions. Now, this vehicle has 15 seconds left here in the auction, but it'll work well for the example that we're going to have here today. So, one of the great things about ACV is the level of detail as far as the pictures are concerned. So, especially as a new dealer, I want to know if I can't physically go out and walk, touch, do everything that I would need to if I was physically in front of the car myself, that there's somebody there that can essentially replicate that for me. So there's pictures inside, outside, everywhere in between. They actually not just taking the exterior photos, they're also taking pictures of the undercarriage of the vehicle as well. They're also taking photos of the tires. I can't tell you, as far as when I'm wholesaling a vehicle, especially to a franchise store, I want to make sure that all four tires are matching, because that's one of the first steps as far as the certification process. I'm actually going to be able to get more money for that car if I was able to physically potentially hand sell that to a franchise store, because I know what they're looking for. When I'm wholesaling a vehicle, I'm guaranteeing major mechanical, tires, and frame on the vehicle, because when this goes to a franchise store, ultimately, did you know that with franchise stores, if, let's say, I'm a used car manager, if I take a car in on trade, so Will, you've got that lovely Ford of yours. If a Ford store was to take that and take it in on trade, do you know how much it costs per hour at a Ford store to get your vehicle repaired?
I do not.
Okay. It can be anywhere between $100 to $140 an hour. Did you know that that used car manager pays that same price that you do? There is no inside hookup or anything like that. The used car manager is actually the best customer of the service department. So that's why I'm sure your Ford is retail ready, right? No need for any kind of repairs to be done to your vehicle.
No.
Okay, great. So if I didn't have to do any work to your car and I took it directly in on trade, I'm going to be looking pretty fine as far as being able to resell it. But when that service department gets their hands on it, I guarantee you they're going to come back with a bill somewhere between $2,000 to $3,000. That's going to cost to get your vehicle ready. So, do you think you can take a hit of $3,000 and your trade-in value in order to get a deal done today, Will?
Not at all. It's almost how much I paid for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be one of those situations where, rather than taking the time and reconning your Ford, I'm going to send it out to auction, very similar to what we're doing right now, and see if there's another dealer that doesn't have to spend that kind of money in order to do the reconditioning costs. So, like my reconditioning at my dealership, for instance, I can get recon done for anywhere between 35 to 60 bucks an hour. Drastically different, obviously, than the Ford store, and then potentially take it, wholesale it, retail it, whatever the end result is. So I already saw that there were some mismatched tires as I was going through this. So things I'm going to want to factor in. And then you have some undercarriage shots of the vehicle as well. One of the main reasons why you're looking at the undercarriage of the vehicle is you're checking for any kind of surface rust. You're checking for any kind of impact damage, anything that would negatively infect the sale, essentially, because one of the first things that you do when you buy a car is you get it up on a rack. You want someone who isn't you, someone who doesn't have all the emotional investment and anything like that, to take a look at the vehicle with a flashlight and really check to make sure that you did your homework. Because even though I teach this stuff, I can tell you that I've missed things. I've seen things that have negatively impacted a vehicle that end up costing you money in the long run. And then we're checking the interior. Okay, one of the biggest things we're looking for in the interior when I train any kind of technicians or buyers to take a look at the car, we call it the toddler. Okay, so if you guys have ever had young kids or been around young kids, one of the first things they do, they touch everything. Okay, and I want you to do the same. I want you to touch buttons. I want you to test, make sure windows are moving. I want you to go through and make sure that everything that you have on here is functional, can work, and is absolutely moving in the right direction. So that interior, especially if it's got auxiliary videos, audio, we want to test to make sure those are working as well. Because again, much like I could tell you having a family, I can't tell you how many times I get in my wife's car, stuff randomly is broken, making weird sounds. And then I ask her about it, and she has no idea what I'm talking about. That just popped up. I have no idea where that even remotely came from. So we want to be curious as far as when we're in these cars. We also want to test to make sure heat and cold work really well. We want to make sure that AC is nice and frosty. And then we want to make sure that heat is working as well, just because, especially depending on what time of year it is, that can be a little bit more difficult. And then also, what kind of add ons do we have with the car? Okay. The lower end or they're just not going to function as well for resale as you would with something that has the higher end model that has everything desirable as far as added features in the car. You're going to be able to get more for it, typically speaking. Now, this is always an important picture that I talk to with when I'm training anybody. Okay. When you're buying cars online, you see the RPM portion on the left hand side. You want to make sure that that's never resting at zero if you're buying a car online, because if it's not resting at zero, that means the car is on. Okay. And obviously, we want to make sure that we're testing these cars when they're on. And I can tell that that little light of mine is shining right there. And well, it's a Chrysler. So I kind of anticipate it's going to have broken things coming with that, but that's a story for another time.
This is also why you press all the buttons and check everything.
Absolutely.
It is a Chrysler.
So we also want to look under the hood as well. Some of the things that we're looking for under the hood isn't just the fluids itself. We want to look and check for any kind of impact damage. Has anybody messed with the car? If we're buying off the street or even buying from auction, one of the first telltale signs that someone's messed with this car is if someone's detailed the engine. Okay. I know it seems weird, but if someone's detailed the engine, they're hiding something. Okay. I can guarantee you there's been a leak somewhere that is oil related, and that's the reason why they're detailing the car. I know people think that it adds value to the car, but to me personally, because I'm in the car industry and I have trust issues, it's a red flag to me that I'm going to look a little bit harder to try to find out whatever they were trying to hide. Now, a wonderful dipstick. Okay. Now, why is this important? Okay, what are the few things that I'm looking at when it comes to a dipstick to test to see if a vehicle is in good overall health?
What do you think, Will?
Like the status of the oil, see if it's like sludgy or not, and see if there's even oil on the stick. Because sometimes,
Yes,
some people just neglect even putting
absolutely.
oil in the car.
Yeah, you brought up a few really good points. We're looking at consistency in the oil. We want it to make sure that obviously, yes, if the oil is clean, it's good to go. Most of the time, oil is probably going to look very similar to what we have here on the screen. Sludge is, yes, absolutely a common problem. We're also looking if there's any kind of milky type consistency because we want to make sure that there's been no water or coolant that has gotten into our oil as well. We also want to take a little bit of the oil and rub it between our fingers because we want to test for any kind of grit to see if there's any kind of grind, any kind of causes that will have us ultimately maybe shopping for an engine in the not so distant future if we tend to run into problems as far as that vehicle is concerned. So, yes, we're looking for oil levels. We're looking to make sure everything looks on the up and up. Whoops. So, outside of just oil itself, what are some of the other things that we look on the car? We're looking underneath for that sludge factor, like you were talking about there, Will. And we're also looking at the coolant as well. Now, what can we tell about this picture here?
Way too much.
Way too much? Where is it? It's
Yeah,
not
it's
there.
none.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Hence the sarcasm.
I know it's dry, but it's there, much like the sarcasm.
It's there somewhere. It's in the engine. It's not in the reservoir.
So yes, especially with the coolant, as far as what we're looking at and how we're going through some of these things, we want to make sure that it's not problematic down the road. Our emissions level important in order to actually physically get the vehicle smogged. Okay, California has one of the most restrictive of all the 50 states regarding smog. So we want to make sure we're not going to be potentially running into those problems down the road. And then here is our check engine light, a P0303 or a cylinder 3 misfire. Okay. Now, here's the wonderful thing about a misfire. It could just be a spark plug. It could be the whole engine is toast. Okay. So that's where a little bit more research as far as common things on a vehicle. I will tell you, I'm a big hybrid and electrical guy. And whenever I see this in a third generation Prius, it always scares me. Okay. Because although, yes, it can be just a spark plug, because the water pumps actually go out on Priuses, it will actually smoke the whole engine. And I've bought a few Prius engines, unfortunately, as a direct result of that. I remember a good friend of mine, I was working with him and he called me and he talked about because he didn't change the oil in his Prius, he actually slipped a rod through his Prius and blew up the whole engine. I wasn't even mad. I was kind of impressed. It was one of those situations where proper car care is very important. Now, your VIN sticker is important for multiple reasons because this should be obviously on the door jamb, and we're looking for proper tire size, proper inflation, and then just information in general about the vehicle that will help guide us in as far as proper identification. You always want to check to make sure that the VIN matches because believe it or not, I've seen it out there in the field where one of these things is not like the other, and it can be problematic down the road. Two keys is always fun, not required, but definitely adds a little bit of value when we go to resale. And then what are we looking at here? It'll buff out just fine, right? So some of this stuff is PDR or paintless dent removal. Some of it will require a body shop. It all kind of depends on where it is as far as the line is concerned. But we're also looking at any kind of damage potentially going through and analyzing if there's anything that we need in the way of support. And if the pictures were it would be just fine. But I will tell you that because the condition report gives us a little bit more information here, we're going to go through and be able to talk in a little bit better consistency overall about what's going on with our car. So, well, you called it. Not so much sludge, but milky condition as far as the oil is concerned, combined with my P0303 code. Will, you're not a mechanic, but I can have you guess. What do you think's wrong with this vehicle?
Well, misfire said something's wrong with the engine. It's kind of just a dumbed down guess, but that's the only thing I can think of currently.
Cool. Chris, take us home. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with this van?
Well, it's got something leaking into the oil, which is causing lubrication issue in one of the cylinders.
Yeah. So this engine is toast. Okay. Especially being a Chrysler Pacifica, I don't know how much that's going to necessarily cost me. So what I can do though, just a little bonus coverage. Go to this website here, car-part.com. And I can take a look based on where my dealership is located. Oh, that's good. The engine's only $3,500. Dealer cost. Okay. So I don't think that I will be buying this vehicle today, but it does still give us a good opportunity to go through and book it out to see what potentially we're looking at when we're wholesaling cars. So a lot going on with this vehicle. Air blows, but does not. It's not working properly. It's got mismatched tires. Tires are all over the place. We know we're going to need some new tires potentially, and we know that a few different things populated up here as far as our cost analysis is concerned. But I will take the time to book this vehicle out properly. Now we know our recon is going to definitely be a little bit higher, probably than normal. Now, you don't have to use this program if you're watching this at home. There are plenty of alternative programs that you can use that will get you where you need to go as far as your cost analysis is concerned. This is called vAuto. It is an appraisal tool. The reason why I use it is because I do wholesale vehicles directly to franchise stores. So having used the tools that they use, it helps me gain a little bit more information as far as the people that I'm helping support. You can also use things like AutoNeek, just some basic Kelly Blue Book apps. There's a lot of really good VIN tools that you can utilize that can get you where you need to go. So let's start first with our book down here. Now, there are a couple of ads that I could potentially put on this car. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the Carfax here, and I'm going to look at a couple of different things. I'm also going to use this as a training exercise as well, so we can take a look at our car. Now, if this car didn't have a potentially blown engine, this is how we're going to treat it. Okay. So if I'm taking this car in on trade, I see that it's got 19 service history records. That gets me excited because that tells me that whoever took care of this car did get it regularly scheduled as far as the maintenance is concerned. So we know exactly what we're looking at, where they took it, and what they actually did with it in order to help it get down the road. Now, it was traded in very recently, and it looks like it went directly to the trade line. But in order to get the information and not have to guess here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and just pull the Monroney label or the sticker on the car. Now, important couple of things as far as what we're looking at here is not just what this car ultimately sold for, potentially new. What I'm looking for is the optional equipment here. I'm looking to see if there's anything additional that I can add on to this car that can potentially add at its value. And based on the information that I'm seeing, there isn't anything here that needs to be added. And it is a one owner vehicle. So I can come down here and I can trust now that my book is correct. Now, a few things about the book. We have our base price as far as our book is concerned. That is typically speaking the number that I'm going to go off of. Okay. If there are any ads or anything, then yes, I will factor that into the cost. What I'm not paying as much attention to is the odometer adjustment. Okay. If it adds money as far as the mileage is concerned, I'm not going to be able to get maybe just even a portion of that money back. If it goes negative as far as the miles, then yes, I will absolutely factor that in as far as my cost is concerned. So my book plus the miles is $16,524. Now, I'm not going to be able to get close to that as far as this vehicle is concerned, just based on the overall usage and what's out there as far as the current market supply. What I'm also going to look at is I'm going to look at the MMR, or the Manheim market value, as far as the vehicles are concerned. Now, Manheim is one of the largest physical auctions in the world, and MMR has become a unit of measurement that a lot of dealers will recognize. So I want to make sure that I'm acknowledging what kind of potential costs or what this would do if the vehicle was in average wholesale condition as far as the marketplace is concerned. And I'm looking at it, and based on the condition, I'm looking at $12,650. However, there are other things that I have to factor in up here. Now, my reconditioning. We talked about that the engine is about $3,500. It's going to cost me about $500 or more to put it in, probably closer to about $800. So we're already in at about $4,300. Not to mention, I'm going to have to do some body work. So more than likely, this number is probably closer to $5,000 in order to put that in. Now, I've got some of the cost factors already built in. Now, what's it going to cost me to transport this over? Probably in the ballpark about $400. My auction fee here too. And then I'll have to factor in how much I want to potentially make.